Happy Tuesday. Welcome back to the Morning Brushback Podcast. I'm your co-host, Dan Blewett. I'm here joined remotely by my nemesis, Bobby Stevens. Bobby, how are you?
Good morning. Good morning.
And we have a great guest today. Bobby, who is our guest today?
Our guest is radio. Rick, would you call yourself a radio personality? I'm going to call you radio personality.
Sure.
Former 670 The Score radio personality in Chicago. Podcast host, I'm Fat Podcast and Basketball Camp. Rick Camp. Rick, welcome.
Hey, thanks for having me, guys. I appreciate it. I can't say since I've been laid off that I've been awake and showered and truly conscious this early, but hey, happy to be here.
We are flattered. We're truly
showering
and honored and flowered. Yeah.
Yeah, you didn't need to shower, but we appreciate that.
I don't know about you guys. I'm a morning shower person. I need the shower to help wake up and just kind of start thinking and just get out of the normal like morning doldrums. So that's an essential for me.
I'm kind of like stare in bed and hate myself for a while and then start moving and then just feel really groggy. That's like my routine in a sense, just like hatred for the world for like an hour. That's kind of where I go.
But Dan's on the East Coast, so he's got an hour. He's got a jump start on us.
It is 9:03 here. It's very exciting. Yeah, the whole time zone thing. But Rick is also an experienced podcaster as well. You've got the I'm Fat podcast, which is very funny. And I love your. We had my former business partner design our podcast logo, which I think logo and design is incredibly important for people just giving you a try. Yeah, and I love your logo. It's this burger. It's got like I'm fat in it. It's funny.
Yeah, one of our listeners who's a friend of Jay, the guy I do the podcast with, when we switched platforms, he made the logo for us and we saw it and we weren't sure what we were looking for, but we saw it and we were like, holy crap, that's it. That's exactly what we need. Like that's the essence right there.
Yeah, that's how you want to feel about a logo. Is you want to look at and be like, that's it. And sometimes it can take a long time to get to that point, but sometimes it doesn't, and it's cool when it's just like, bingo, print it.
Yeah,
that's awesome. So
you got a nice logo for the basketball camp too. Who designed that one? That's
a former Score fantasy football expert winner, Steven Johnson, actually, who's like kind of dabbled in some graphic design, and I was looking for a logo, and after getting badgered enough to actually start that podcast, which I'd been wanting to do for a while but didn't quite know how I wanted to do it, and then hey, I got some extra time on my hands, so I might as well get this thing going, and he was willing to help me out. I just kind of wanted it to look somewhat like a center court type design, with it having look like he actually was on a court. So he gave me the kind of like color palette I wanted, and I'm so bad with art. The fact I just wanted to like be able to dictate it to somebody and hope to God they understand what the hell I was talking about. And he delivered big time, man. I love it.
Yeah, it's a good logo. So Rick, you've been in the radio industry for a long time, and now you're heavy in podcasting as well, but how do you feel about the space? I mean, you've seen this change a ton in your career. Mm-hmm. Tell me about radio versus podcasting.
Over the last probably 3 years or so, I've really leaned towards, as a listener, enjoying the podcast space much better. Like if I look at my phone right now, the amount of podcasts that I have, like in Pocket Cast, that's the app that I use for listening purposes. I've got so many different podcasts, and most of them are basketball related because I am a simpleton pretty much. I have very few like true interests, and boy, basketball is the big one. So basketball and food, two of my biggest things. So I've leaned towards liking the long form where you truly have the leg room to tell stories and really break down like X's and O's if that's your thing, or just being more of a storyteller based on who you're listening to. You can just cater it much more to what you want, as opposed to radio, where part of the challenge of radio, and part of the reason I still love radio from a being in the industry standpoint, is you have to kind of fill both voids. And I know what I like that stations are doing now, that part of it's a bad thing, is that radio revenue is down. There's not as many commercials. So you just straight have more time to maybe go long form and change the format or the sound of your show. Like Lawrence Holmes that I worked with for a long time, his show if you really listen to it, sounds closer to a podcast than it does a radio show. The only thing that's really different is he resets in the middle of it. Because like with a podcast, as I'm learning and I'm still working towards myself, you don't really have to reset as much in terms of who I am and who I'm speaking with and what the topic is, because you chose to hit play. You saw the description. So in theory, you have a good idea already. But
yeah, I'm Dan Blewett, idiot.
Yeah,
you should know this already. I don't have to reset and say, hey, thanks again for tuning in. I'm here with Rick Camp and Bobby Stevens, my nemesis.
Right. And you guys are smarter than me in terms of having your actual names on your Zoom screen, where once again, I'm a simpleton and I just have all lowercase and it's just my first name and my initial. Like that's pretty much it.
Funny you mentioned that. One of our guests, and I won't mention him, but I hope he hears this. There's all those like different, like all those different fake names that you would use if you're like prank calling someone, like Mo Lester, or he had his set at Drew Peacock and forgot to change it. And so he's like, hey, I need you to edit. I need you to cover that up and edit it. So we're like, obviously, of course we'll do that.
Yeah.
But it's funny that you mentioned that because he didn't realize and he couldn't figure out how to change it once we were going. So
yeah, the only time I ever think of it is when I'm already on a call and I'm looking at it. I never think of it any other time to be like, hey, moron, maybe you should change that. Nope.
It's close. Me. It's better than it's better than
your name in it.
It's better than Drew. Peacock. Yeah.
True.
Yeah.
So you're talking about Lawrence Holmes. He does his own, I think he does his own podcast.
It's like 7 of them, I swear.
Yeah, right. Like so it's a little bit about radio. How I guess working in radio for as long as you did, what was your experience as far as dealing with some of these guests, dealing with some of the, have you been starstruck talking on the phone with some of these guys, getting some people, maybe some, especially with the Last Dance on, I'm sure there's people on radio are trying to get all these former Bulls on, have you been starstruck by any of the people you've gotten on the radio, on some of these radio shows?
I'm trying to think back because it was more towards the beginning and it I don't know, it might sound, I don't know how it sounds, but like once you're in it for a while, a lot of the starstruck aspect kind of goes away. Like I know the first time I spoke with Frank Thomas, when I called him, that was a big one. Cause for me, growing up a White Sox fan, that was huge to get to speak to him, even if it was, just the basic interaction. When I was first getting to meet some Bears players, like before I was full-time, the last 3 years of the Doug and OB post-game show, on 670 The Score, I was working with Doug Buffone, who is, legendary guy, and Ed O'Bradovich, 2 guys that maybe aren't in the innermost circle of like Bears defenders all time, but in that second layer, they are absolutely right there. And right. 2 guys that were really cool and just, they treat you, even though like, who am I? Someone that had worked at the Score like 1 year by the time I was working with them, just interacting with those guys, different guests that would come in studio, kind of take away a lot of that. I think the first time I met Wani was kind of like that too. Dave Wanstead was another example of that. Cause like,
big personality.
Yeah. I remember as a kid, I don't remember how we got tickets, but like with one of my baseball teams, we got tickets to a recording of the Dave Wanstead show. And it was after who were they playing? They blocked a field goal at the end of regulation to win the game. And it wasn't the Packers one. I think it might've been like the Dolphins or something. And I just remember going there and thinking it was so cool, first time in front of a TV, being part of a TV audience and all that kind of stuff. So they're not like the biggest names in the world that really got me, but like it's ones with like personal connections for sure. And then just some guys that might be a little lesser, but you just realize how cool they are. Like Pat Manley has every reason in the world to be a jerk if he really wanted to. I mean, he played the most games in Bears history, long snapper for the Bears forever. If they were ever to put a long snapper in the Hall of Fame, he would be in consideration for that. You would have to assume. I mean, the long snapper award for the best long snapper in college is the Patrick Manley Award. He is one of the nicest guys, regardless of former athlete or not, that I have worked with in any capacity. And I love that dude. So part of what I liked about it is how it kind of stripped away some of that gloss that all the, celebrities have of just, yeah, they're still just kind of looking to be normal people just like us in every instance they can.
Yeah.
Right.
I haven't seen the Michael Jordan Last Dance thing. It's on my list of stuff to watch because I don't actually watch much TV. Did you have any or many experiences with Michael Jordan? I'd obviously be well past his career, but where do you fall on MJ? Have you watched his documentary?
Oh yeah, I watched The Last Dance. I recorded a podcast last night with Jack Silverstein, who's one of the best Chicago sports historians out there. He's actually in the middle of writing a book on the Bulls dynasty, so he had some great insights that'll be up posting on Basketball Camp later today.
Oh, awesome!
And but I haven't interacted with him personally. But you know, the random everyone says when news happens, you know, what the hell, put a call into one of Jordan's people. So like you do that and you just wait to hear the no just to say you did it. But that's about as close as I've gotten. I mean, other people on those teams, I've had conversations with Will Perdue, who's, you know, been the victim of some Jordan abuse, but also just, I thought he was one of the more underrated people that gave some quotes in The Last Dance, because he wasn't there a lot, but like what they chose to use from him was like really perfect and succinct in what he was able to say. And I thought it worked really well.
Yeah, I've been I've been following. I'm through episode 9. So I've got the last one to finish up, but I was just curious, how did you feel about it? Did you like how it was done? I had, you know, going into it, I had different expectations of what it actually was. Surprisingly enough, I was really expecting more total team Bulls and more 98 Bulls. And you got everything Jordan. I mean, it was everything Jordan, back to, you know, the infamous, like that embellished story of him getting cut from the varsity team, which wasn't, you know, he just didn't make varsity as a sophomore, which everybody knows is like, okay, then he just played JV.
Right.
No big thing. And it's some major slight against his career. But how'd you feel about how I forget the director's name, Jason something. How'd you feel about how he did?
I thought at times they got stuck between, do you do this on the 98 Bulls for the people that were mostly there for it? Or do you also kind of do some of the Jordan stuff for the younger generation that doesn't really know as much? And I feel like some of that got stuck in, like, I agree that a lot of the 98 stuff got lost in translation, because this isn't much, I don't know how much of a spoiler alert this is for you, but just, you don't get any real, like, Ron Harper and Luke Longley were starters on that team. Obviously they weren't the most important guys, but Ron Harper, the most he's mentioned is as Jordan's golf buddy and as the guy that was pissed that he didn't get to guard Jordan for the infamous game winner, a shot on Elo.
Yeah,
like that's right. Ron Harper was a 19-5-5 guy for a decade before he got to the Bulls. People don't remember that because it was with Cleveland and with the Clippers. Like, he was a real dude for a decade. And then just his importance to the switchability of that team was huge for the Bulls. The fact that they were able to switch everything. I mean, it even gets brought up now, mind you, it was a play that the Bulls ended up losing on when Reggie Miller went the two-handed shove into the chest of Jordan for that game 4 winner in the Eastern Conference Finals. Reggie Miller said he knew they were going to switch. So he had Ron Harper on him to start. They knew they were going to switch and Jordan was going to take him. And that was why he kind of took the route that he did on that play. But like, Harper was huge. And then Luke Longley was the first Australian player ever in the NBA. And if you look into the fact that
Luke Longley,
if there was anybody that was going to get crapped on, it was Luke Longley from that starting lineup, but he always took it. He never really got mad about anything. And then you hear stories from other Australian players that have made their way over, how important Luke Longley was. I know on Facebook, Chris Ansey just put a post out not too long ago about the importance Luke Longley played in his career, being one of the other pioneers coming over from Australia. And think of how the NBL now plays a factor in the NBA with the high schoolers. Luke Longley kind of started all that. So like, those are just a couple examples. I think the way in episode 9, they weave in and out of the Steve Kerr hitting that game-winning shot, also mixing in the backstory of how his father was murdered and how that kind of gives better context to what to the person Steve Kerr is and why he was perfect for those moments, why he was perfect for that team, was done incredibly well. So it's almost frustrating for me as someone that knew a lot. I didn't get a whole lot of new stuff out of it. There was some stuff obviously that was newer, but those are the kind of things that might have gotten missed. But if you were just looking for nostalgia, woo bulls, learn about Jordan, if you didn't know that much, it's right there for you. Like I'm not trying to make this sound like it was bad. It was really good. I'm going to watch the whole thing again. Like there's no two ways about it. I'm just going to, but I was kind of hoping like you, Bobby, that it was a little more balanced in terms of Jordan to 98 stuff. Do we really need that much dream team? I don't know. If you just maybe if there was new footage of those infamous Monte Carlo practices, then maybe you put more of an emphasis on it. But there was nothing new that wasn't in the Dream Team doc that runs on NBA TV all the time. So that was probably my biggest thing. But there was a ton of good too. Like I do love some of the ways they wove in and out of a lot of the just like anecdotes. Like I think it was early in episode 9 when you first see the Utah Jazz. And apparently Brian Russell, the first time he plays Jordan, is smack talking him. And Jordan mentions, well, I already knew this guy's scouting report, and just how that played into it led perfectly to the final shot of his career with the Bulls. The Russell is awful at staying on balance when he has to move laterally. That seems to be fairly prescient as we got to the end, the middle of episode 10. So I thoroughly enjoyed it. I'm not going to say I didn't, but yeah, my expectations were a little different going in. But once I kind of realized what they were doing, you got Jordan, you use Jordan for everything you can. I just kind of sat back and enjoyed it.
Yeah, I thought they undersold a lot of the guys on the team. They talk about like Tony Kukoc had a huge game in
Game 7 of the Eastern Conference Finals against the Pacers. He had 21, I think.
Had a huge game and basically carried the team. And sorry, Dan, if Rick and I are reliving our youth Bulls fandom.
Dude, we're podcasting. Just roll with it. All right. I had a Chicago Bulls pennant on my in my room as a kid. So like I was a huge Bulls fan. I just was on all the bandwagons, I guess, because I was from the Maryland area. But yeah, I just am not as deep as you guys. But continue.
The Luke Longley thing is interesting because you have two prominent players on the team that are from overseas, or Australia and Croatia, or I think Croatia for Tony Kukoc. And that wasn't a thing in the 90s or even it's not even a thing necessarily now. There's a lot more overseas players, but it's not the NBA isn't flooded with them. I just wanted more. I wanted more that I didn't know. Even listening to the recaps before I had watched it all, episodes 3 and 4, like, episode 3 and 4 are about Rodman. And in my mind, I'm like, this is going to be freaking awesome. Like Dennis Rodman just unfiltered the worm for 2 hours.
Wait, was there ever a time when he is filtered? Like, does he exist in a filter?
Let me rephrase that. Unseen footage of the worm, which is like, I want to see like a half naked Carmen Electra in a Vegas club with Dennis Rodman going wild. And I felt like I didn't get any of that. I just got like, Dennis was.
That's the content right there.
You want to draw fans. That's what. And Madonna, like, give me a Madonna interview. Give me something. I mean, I know, he dyed his hair, and like Dennis Rodman was a weird guy. He rode a motorcycle. Like, we all knew that. I want to see him partying with like people you didn't know that hung out with Dennis Rodman, and I wanted more specificity.
There you go.
Specificity.
I don't know. I'm not a.
It's a hard word.
I'm an NIU guy as well, so my grammar is not as top notch. But I just wanted more. Like I wanted more 98 Bulls. Well, I felt like I didn't get it.
I think part of the issue is, and anytime what's his first name? It's Klay Thompson's uncle was actually Michael Thompson's brother was the main guy in charge of getting the footage back in 98. So that was him. So whenever they wanted to reference that footage, he was the guy normally that the production staff would call. That was part of the reason they were able to be so tight with Jordan, is that Michael Thompson was one of Jordan's favorite players. Like Jordan almost wanted to change his spelling of his name to match Michael Thompson because he was such a big fan of his. So the fact that it was his brother kind of gave him an in. But the thing is, so much of it was just the basketball or the to and from basketball. There was, there just wasn't that much of the off days necessarily. Like you got the practice, the off day golfing where like Ron Harper and Jordan are kind of like awkwardly sitting on the same seat of a cart. Like you get a little bit of that, but yeah, like if we could have had video of Jordan going to Rodman's place to pick him up with Carmen Electra, like hiding in the back of the room. Yes. Yeah, that'd be great. But there's like, I'm sure Jordan's not thinking, hey, let me call this dude and get a crew over here too, or the other thing is that I would love if there was footage of, or just more detail on, is the end of year, let's get together. Everybody just like either brings something that they wrote and just reads it or says something about somebody on the team. And then they burned everything that they wrote as just kind of like this was our last meeting. This is the last time we're all going to be here together. If there was a way to be part of that.
They did that, or you wish that existed?
I wish that footage existed. They did that. The players, and the coaches did that, but that also could be something where they were just turned down because it was, pointed out that they went everywhere they were allowed to. There were very few instances where they said, just stay out of here. I could see that being one of those, but we never really got clarity if that was the instance or if they just straight didn't know what was happening and the players and coaches all just kept it to themselves. But still, it's totally worth the watch. Lord knows, especially now when we're just dying for content or just anything new to watch. Because I don't know about you guys, but I've kind of had my fill of watching old games. I thought I was going to have more of an appetite for it, but regardless of sport, I've just kind of hit my limit. I've watched basketball, football, baseball, a little bit of college football, and I just can't do it anymore, man. I've hit my limit.
Yeah, and I was asked the other day about KBO. Hey, have you watched any KBO games? I'm like, watching a KBO game to me feels like watching a junior college baseball game when I don't have because Bobby and I train young baseball players. If I don't have a kid on a team, I'm not just gonna go watch junior college baseball. That's what KBO feels like to me. It's like it's a complete why bother moment. Like I don't really, and I think this goes back to the point of sports. We're not hungry just to watch human beings swing a wooden bat at a freaking ball. That's not really what we're looking for. We're looking for the community of it, the excitement of it, the comparing my tribe to your tribe, like all those social aspects of sports, I think are what we really miss more. And it just happens to be baseball's time that, like, if this was basketball season, people would miss basketball, obviously, but still for, I think, the same overarching reason, which is we have something to talk about. We have something to root about. I can jab you and my team, destroyed you and came from behind and pulled out a tough win. That's what we really look for. But I could see Korean players swing the bat and throw the ball, but I could not possibly care less about that.
Yeah, I have a hard time getting into it. I tried. I watched one inning of it, and I was like, you know what? I'm good. I understand there might be some great it's funny. I treat that the way a lot of people treat the NBA in terms of if there's an epic bat flip or something, it'll be posted everywhere. I'll see it. A lot of people do that with like their NBA content now, or really a lot of sports content in general, of just waiting for the highlights. And then, maybe you get some of the extra context around it a little bit later if you even care for that. But yeah, that's why, like, as much as players might hate it, narratives matter. Narratives matter, maybe not in every single instance, but in a vast majority of instances, just for the sake of keeping people interested. I mean, especially with this Jordan doc, there were so many people that are either not basketball fans, either never were or just not anymore, that were willing to watch that because of Jordan or because of Rodman, because they were, bigger than basketball personalities, or just because they were fans of the 90s Bulls. They were maybe in the Chicagoland area and they were just so huge that you couldn't ignore them, that type of thing. So, and all that stuff matters. So when you're just seeing, like you mentioned, just guy performing a sport's actions.
Yeah.
All right, fine. I'm just not going to choose it 9 times out of 10.
Yeah, for sure. Have either of you watched the Beastie Boys documentary that was on Apple TV?
I have
Either of
not.
you? No one?
No, I
No.
have not. I watched, I've got to catch up on some music docs. I watched the Miles Davis one. That's on Netflix. That one is pretty fantastic. I've got a couple others. Like I have a note in my phone of other ones that I want to see. I think the Beastie Boys is on there. Let me check this real quick.
I liked it because I've been listening to their stuff more as an adult. I didn't really grow up with them, like, but I there's such a, I don't think contrarian is the word, but they're three Jewish kids from New York, and they made this crazy, funky, awesome music.
Yeah.
And it's like, who are you people? And just seeing them as grown men, and of course they lost one of the members of their band to cancer. I think back in like 2011. But just like hearing their story and just like they were very like raucous, especially when they came on the scene, and then they matured as I think a lot of the, well, I think all of the artists do that hang around, because if you don't, you just like get crushed by the touring and the drugs and all that stuff. But hearing them grow up and just like seeing that, like that's like a normal, like you are still like a normal kind of nerdy white dude, and you made this awesome, like it's really funny because they feel at a place, sometimes when you see a band and you're like, that's not who I imagined was playing that drum set. They're a lot like that, but you can also see in their personality that they're super just like, I don't know. It was really interesting for me to see behind the curtain on those guys in particular. So I enjoyed it for that. I thought it was, when it ended, I was kind of like, wait, that's the end? That was it? That was kind of how I felt at the end, but overall I enjoyed it.
A little anticlimactic with the Beastie Boys.
Well, I don't know how long it was. Well, I mean, you guys are talking about the MJ thing, and that's obviously on my list to watch. Like I'm fascinated with Michael Jordan, like everyone is. Like I grew up watching him. But the Beastie Boys thing was only like maybe 90 minutes, and I don't know their whole history, but I felt like they talked a lot about the early days, and then they have so many albums, and they kind of like I don't know. I feel like there's a big logical jump. Either you've seen the Kings of Leon documentary. It's maybe like 7 or 8 years old now. That was a similar one. If you know the Kings of Leon, they were like, their dad was a pastor, and they like drove around. He was like, like smacking people on the heads and like absolving and like get out demon, like they're like holy roller family. And then suddenly they were the two sons, Caleb and I can't remember his other name. They were going around and like singing on like Christian TV networks and stuff like that. And they kind of got discovered, and essentially they got like, hey, you guys are going to be a band now. And they took like their cousin and this maybe and one outsider, like a friend, and like, okay, you four are going to be a band. And this like guy just like made them into the Kings of Leon, is kind of how it was portrayed. And so it's like, oh, that's really strange. Like, how did you actually become good? Because I think they're really good. Like their music's changed a lot over the years. But then it was like, okay, you guys just like became a band, like manufactured. And it's like, well, how did you actually become good? And like, there was like this huge logical leap from that to superstardom. And I'm like, yeah, doesn't every band like play crummy venues in a crummy bus like forever, and they have to get better at their instrument and like learn, like where was all that part? So I don't know.
That one thing that I would love to see, and maybe it's like the sports transferring over to it, or the fact, like, so when I initially went to NIU, I was a music education major. So a lot of that stuff is really interesting to me. So like, I would love to have a doc of just about those people, the people that are putting the bands together, that hear one or two voices and be like, well, if I paired that with this guy that I heard from here and this person that I heard from here, that really makes a whole lot of sense for a whatever type of band it is. And not even as much as like the car wash style, like boy bands. That one seems like, it was just much more, there was a template and you just kind of fill the template. And at that point in time, it was really hard to screw it up. But like for putting together a lot of these bands, it's so interesting how it's like a GM. It's like being a GM in any of these sports of how do you notice the talent? And then when you realize this is my core piece, what skills you need from the others to be able to fill the other spots to make everything harmonious is really interesting. I'd love to like have a doc of just them speaking about that process.
Yeah. I mean, I think a prominent guy right now is Dave Grohl, where he went from one iconic band in Nirvana to now he's become I guess, the Nirvana of the last 20 years with Foo Fighters. His story is interesting. Just his talent is amazing. I did watch a partial documentary on, it wasn't their most recent album, but the album before, where they recorded it all on tape. Like it had to be in one take, and he recorded it all on tape for sound, and just like his whole process of going through that. I mean, sticking with the music, my brother-in-law works for RCA Records. He's actually a manager. He's top 40 manager. I'm not exactly sure what his title is, but he's basically a handler for the Backstreet Boys since their existence, since they started. And he deals with all these people. Justin Timberlake, Britney Spears is one of his artists that he handles. And just to get some, he travels, he goes to the concerts, he's there for 20 minutes, calls the radio stations, make sure they play, they get their spins and all that stuff. And it's a whole like behind the scenes working of what the music industry is, where it's like people are pushing your music constantly, and it's all about relationships. And you could be the greatest musician in the world, but if you don't have anybody behind you pushing your music, like, you're just going to fall on deaf ears, essentially. And the Backstreet Boys are, you see them pop up into relevance more and more in the last couple of years. Like they're the ever recurring boy band that just keeps popping back up and making their way into Super Bowl commercials and Doritos commercials, and they're on tour with, Florida Georgia Line. Like they've got a song with them. It's like they're.
Why are you so up on the Backstreet Boys, Bobby? Like, what's happening right now?
No,
hey,
I
you don't like the Backstreet Boys? Get out of here, Dan.
No, I get it, because it's one of the moments that made me feel older, is when I realized I'm getting targeted for nostalgia now in everything. So like you mentioned with the commercials, bands that are a little bit younger, like maybe Florida Georgia Line's like, hey, if I can leech on to these guys to maybe get a little bit more of that slightly older demo than maybe what I'm getting normally, I understand that's 100% a thing. I mean, everything, I watched on Netflix, there's The Toys That Made Us, and I watched the one on Ninja Turtles and the ones on Power Rangers, and they just 100% from the start of that, just to help it launch, targeted everybody that was like a kid in the 90s. Yeah. So all that stuff is right. It's right there for us right now.
Who's your spirit Ninja Turtle?
Always been Raphael.
Yeah,
which is
me too.
Which has kind of been against a little bit, because I've always been kind of known as a slightly nicer, more chill person. But then I guess when I really get going, Raphael comes out. So I've always been a Raphael guy.
Interesting. 3 Raphael personalities in the same podcast. Interesting.
He's the rebel. He's the rebel Ninja Turtle.
Yeah, he's headstrong for sure.
Did you guys see the video where they did the middle-aged mutant Ninja Turtles?
No.
Oh, please send it to me.
Yeah, I'll find it now and I'll send it to you, because it is so good. I don't want to spoil it, but they hit like every note perfectly, and Raph is the one that you're like, well, yeah, if anyone was going to be this guy, it was him. So
he's on his 3rd marriage and like 2nd time in rehab or whatever.
Oh yeah, he's asking for money, like that type of thing.
Sounds and character. Yeah,
it's perfect. So yeah, okay. You guys get a chance.
I'm excited.
Go find that.
I'm excited. Yeah. No, The Toys That Made Us was cool. I watched a bunch of them. I mean, there's just a lot of backstory to everything, obviously, right? But just like seeing the one on Legos, on all this stuff, it was fascinating. I can't remember some of the other ones I watched. I watched these when I was in Chicago in January. I watched a bunch of them, but I grew up with Ninja Turtles and Ghostbusters. I had my Ghostbusters backpack, my trap, slide that out and suck them in. I mean, it's funny how we crave nostalgia. I feel like, especially in this quarantine, like you're just looking for comforts. And no better time to bask in your childhood stuff and eat some Kraft macaroni and cheese, with SpongeBob shapes. Even though that's not really like my childhood, that was like my sister's childhood, and I watched that with her. But so what have been some of your quarantine comforts? Let's transition into food a little bit, since you're fat and your podcast is fat, as I'm fat. So what are your creature comforts at the moment in quarantine? It doesn't have to be food related.
I'll start food wise, pizza rolls, because our oven is down right now. Like we were like, we're starting to smell gas. Let's turn this off. So, but we just haven't wanted to have anybody come out and look at our oven at this point. So we're operating without an oven, so we got to be a little creative. So pizza rolls have been a big one for me. We found clutch to find a new pizza places. Like I moved just over a year ago to Lombard. I'd lived in West Chicago, then out in DeKalb for college, and then over to Geneva initially when I got married. And so moving to Lombard, I just didn't quite know the area as well, but found a clutch pizza spot. So the Sunday tradition has been pan pizza from Gulliver's in Oak Brook, and then have that while watching The Last Dance. So that's been a Sunday tradition for me. Outside of that, food wise, we do a lot of quesadillas of different varieties. If we have, a lot of times we'll just have ground beef. So we'll just do something like that. Or sometimes it'll just be a cheese quesadilla because I don't know, sometimes we'll do grilled cheese. Sometimes we'll do that. I have a very simple taste palette here, so it doesn't take a whole lot to please me in that regard. But yeah, so food wise, pretty much anything involving cheese or elements of a pizza of any kind are right there for me. And then I've just been doing a lot of TV related stuff. So I've watched The Wire through a few times. So my kind of comfort thing has been rewatching that again. I'd never seen The Sopranos, and I just started this past week. So I'm like 5 episodes in.
Yes.
So I can't wait.
I watched
to
a
keep
good
going
amount of
with
that.
Yeah, like I knew I was hooked in the second episode when Paulie is bitching about how the Italians didn't take advantage of the coffee industry.
Yeah. Spoiler alert for anyone that hasn't seen Sopranos.
Yeah, episode 2, so whatever. But
okay, 2 things we're gonna need to discuss. One is gonna be pizza, because I have very strong opinions on Midwest pizza, because I lived in Central Illinois, in Bloomington, Illinois, for the last 9 years. I sold my baseball academy there, and now I live in DC. But I grew up on New York style pizza. So we're gonna come back to that in a second. But first, you're gonna have to take my food personality test.
Okay.
This is something that I would use on kids in my academy just to break the ice. You have a new, 12, 13-year-old kid. They're nervous, they're intimidated, they're in a weight room for the first time, just like breaking the ice, because everyone is united over food. Number 1, what's your favorite childhood sugary cereal?
Cinnamon Toast Crunch.
Oh man. All right. So this is opinion, but there are correct and just objectively wrong answers.
Yes.
As you all know with food.
Of course.
That's the number 1 answer. So good job there.
All right, I'm good for Family Feud.
Yep. Macaroni and cheese. Do you choose the shapes, the tubes, like the standard, or shells?
Ooh, if I can get the shells, you get the shells, but I am perfectly fine with your standard tubes.
Interesting.
No, that's the wrong answer now.
That's an objective. They like squish between your teeth. They're like eating rubber hose. They have like no cheese retention.
No,
that's a trash. It's a bad take. In the tube.
Oh, no, but no, the shell has the best cheese retention. That's why I like that one the most. But I think if you tear it out, there's the shell, and then the other 2 are just kind of there. And then it depends on the shape. Like if you give me a specific shape and I can kind of give it the eyeball test of, okay, how well is this thing going to retain the cheese? Then maybe I'd put that specific type over your standard tube. But no, the shell is the best in that scenario.
Okay. I accept the shells or shapes, because the shapes, I think the cheese retention is good, but I will agree that like when a couple shells stick together and they got that like the cheese stuck between, they're a little bit al dente, it's pretty solid. Yes. Velveeta is like its whole other animal, but it's just a box for variety here. Okay, number 3, cilantro or no cilantro?
It kind of depends on the day for me. I know that's weird.
That is weird. It's usually it's terrible or I love it.
Yeah,
I'm a terrible person. What are you, Bobby?
I'm a no cilantro person.
Yeah, I lean no, like I default no cilantro, but there are times where, depending on what it is, I'll allow it, and it doesn't ruin my meal.
It doesn't offend your body like it kind of does mine.
Right.
Okay. Number 4, cottage cheese. Do you A, love it or hate it? And B, if you do you eat it on something savory like toast or crackers or fruit?
Never find myself eating it. I don't think I hate it. I'm just kind of like, okay, it's fine. It's there. If someone presents it to me, I'll eat it, but I don't choose to eat it really ever.
That's correct. That's correct there. Nobody chooses cottage cheese. It's just
here's my
texture. It's the texture.
It is a bad texture. It's an objectively bad texture.
And I am so big with texture. Like Jay and I talk about texture all the time of how there are things like a sliced tomato. The you know, like if
like
I'm gonna
the
have
insides are just like it's like wet. It's like a wet.
Which is
cracker.
weird because when you think about like my pizza sensibilities, like Gulliver's sauce is a little chunkier, but it's not chunky to the point where it feels like you're just chomping on the inside of a tomato. It's got just a little bit of chunk here and there to where it's not offensive, but this taste is so good. Mm-hmm. And same with like Lou Malnati's. That's my default, like of your standard deep dish places, your chain deep dish places. That's my go-to, even though they have a chunkier sauce. But yeah, like just having a slice of tomato, I'm out on that.
Yeah, I'm not into tomato either. It's just got this weird sugary, like kind of sweet. It's like, are you a vegetable or be a fruit or be a vegetable? Tomatoes are, yeah.
Tell you what, tomatoes with a little bit of salt though. If you eat it like an apple,
it is a little better with a little bit of salt. But number 5, are you a real cake or ice cream cake person?
I love them both.
This is your last meal. You're about to be executed in prison.
Oh man. And we're saying we're getting like the best version of either.
Mm-hmm.
Then I'm going real cake. I think the floor is much higher on ice cream cake. But if we're talking about the best version of both, the ceiling's much higher on regular cake. And probably I would want like a yellow cake, little bit of like vanilla flavor with raspberry. Man, I'm a sucker. Or no, lemon cake with raspberry, because I am a sucker for raspberry. Like my mom's birthday is a couple days after Mother's Day. So one thing I did for her was I went and got Frango mints, brought them over to her, got her the regular mint and the raspberry ones, because the raspberry ones are delicious. And of course, something we spoke about on the most recent episode of the I'm Fat podcast, the fat tax. What the fat tax is if I went to get my mom a pound of mints, I had to get a 3rd pound for myself, of course, just so that I have them around, so I'm not just purely jealous. That is the fat tax.
That's awesome.
Okay. That's a very informed opinion on cake. I agree. I think cake has because that becomes like pastry chef territory where you can do a lot with cake. There is a high ceiling. I would 100% agree. I was always an ice cream cake person as a kid growing up, but I agree with you. Like I love carrot cake, and phenomenally high ceiling when you get to like the really like what is someone who really knows food and dessert, what can they do with that? Yeah, so I agree with that.
Exactly.
Okay. Well, you did superb, excellent work, as I expect. But when I give this to a person and they're like, I like Kix, and I like Tubes macaroni and cheese, and I like Cheerios, and I like cottage cheese on fruit, I'm like, I don't trust you.
Yeah.
I don't like, my eyes are on you. Like, what are you?
Right. They're giving the default answers just to get by and get to whatever's next, which you always have to give them a little bit of a side eye for, because I don't know. Like it's funny. I can't imagine not thinking as much about, not being as detailed and thinking about all those things food wise. Because especially right now, what else is there really to, just make you truly happy than getting really good food?
Yeah. So, and what kind of psycho buys Kix for their child?
Kix aren't that bad. I
actually liked Kix.
Yeah, that was probably the wrong example, but
out of the plethora of cereals, you walk in and you're like, oh, my kid would probably want some Kix. Like, no, your kid wants Captain Crunch.
Kix
only
are like
the berries.
It's stepping them down from Captain Crunch. That's what Kix are. They're a middle ground between Cheerios, which are disgusting. Feeding your kids Cheerios is
Honey Nut Cheerios.
They're delicious. Cheerios. They're great.
Yeah,
and Kix are in that same realm, like lightly sweetened.
Yeah, see, like I'm big right now on like the middle step. So I haven't gone down to like healthy cereal yet, because let's be real, that's probably just never going to happen. But right now I'm on a big honeycomb kick and Golden Grams.
Oh, Golden Grams are incredible. I put them in the sugary category. Do they have less sugar?
You think I look?
Well, you said you were stepping down. So I assume maybe
I guess I'm just like thinking, well, it doesn't have a cartoon character with it. That means it's healthier.
Low sponsorship, yeah.
Well, that's how you have to rank your cereals, right? Like if you're buying for a child, it's you look at the box.
Yeah.
And if it's got tricks and it's got a, an animal on it with a beak or whatever, you buy that for your kid.
Mm-hmm.
And then you get to like honeycomb where it's like, oh, normal packaging. I guess this is adult cereal. And then you get
honeycomb has some sort of don't they have like a bee or something? They have something, right?
Do they?
Yeah, but then you get to like Raisin Bran where once they start advertising fiber content, it's an adult cereal. Like you need your bran flakes. You're not regular enough to not buy this cereal.
Well, with Golden Grams, and they're a fascinating one. They're soggy in like 44 seconds. It's like, I think it's one of the soggiest cereals. What's your take on this, Rick?
Okay. You guys are not going to like this. No, I don't know anybody that likes my take on this with cereal.
Okay.
I eat cereal with no milk in the bowl, but a glass of milk on the side.
Interesting.
What?
That's an odd. Hold on.
You're right.
When
I
did
do
you
hate that.
When did you start doing this? Were you like 9 and you just decided like, hey, this logistically doesn't make any sense for me?
I am very logistically motivated, but I don't remember when I started that. It might have been always. I just don't have any recollection of like eating cereal with milk when I was younger. It probably happened at some point. I just don't really remember. It's just always made sense to me of why would I want to risk my cereal getting soggy when I could just have the milk on the side to wash it down and keep the integrity of the cereal. So it's not a race against the clock.
But
do you feel like, but then you're like, it's fully hard, dry. The milk, I mean, you're not like holding it in your mouth for a while.
No.
Like doesn't it need like to take a little bit of the edge off? Like it has to be has a little bit of like invasion.
No, I'm good. Especially with like eating now honeycomb. Honeycomb's a little softer by nature, but like Golden Grams is pretty rough, but I don't really care. I'm much more sensitive to heat when it comes to like my mouth and thinking about that kind of stuff than to that kind of texture.
Okay.
It needs a pre-soak. It needs like, before you go in the public pool, they make you rinse like that.
Mm-hmm.
Your cereal needs a rinse. It needs a,
yeah. Who really wants to go into the public pool if you have to? Your cereal bowl is the public pool. I'm avoiding the public pool.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah, I was never a lot of my friends as kids would just have like a baggie of cereal and they just eat dry cereal, and I was like never about that life. I was like, it's not with some milk. It's just not for me.
I guess I just always thought of it closer to like in that regard of just snacking on it, just like chips or pretzels or something like that. It's not that different.
Yeah, I guess I would tend to agree. I mean, something like Cinnamon Toast Crunch, your hand's going to be like pretty kind of gross as you're doing it. It's a little less. But
that's one I still eat with a spoon. Yeah, like I'll still eat that with a spoon, but most of the ones that I eat aren't like that. So I can just with the hand and I'm good.
Gotcha. So let's go to pizza. I think Midwest pizza is trash.
Well, there's
there's two times. I know. Hear me out.
Well, no, there's different varieties of Midwest pizza.
Are we talking?
Yes. Let me, Robert. I got.
Yes. So you're a lunatic, Dan.
You got
deep dish pizza is one thing, but I'm talking about the thing that most families, at least in Central Illinois, seem to get on Friday night was this thin crust, like 5 different cheeses. I don't know if mozzarella is certainly not like the star. And this crackery crust, lots of like sausage and other toppings, and just in general, more like a frozen pizza or a Domino's thin crust pizza.
So closer to like New York style almost.
Yeah, I mean, is that not your experience? I mean, tell me what Midwest pizza is to you, and then I'll go back on my high horse.
Okay, because I'm just trying to determine if you're having more St. Louis style pizza, which is pretty much crackers, cheese, and like ketchup, basically, which is like, pretty awful.
Like Monocle's. What are some of the other brands? But that seems like. Have you had Monocle's pizza?
I have not, but like I'm thinking more. I'm thinking like tavern style is like what you would get at a restaurant, or probably closer to like DiGiorno's crust goes a little higher than what a traditional tavern style would be. But like
hate that.
You don't like DiGiorno at all?
No.
Judging, it's a judging
and,
face.
Yeah, and I mean,
Yeah.
we're all like, it's all about context. That we're judging in terms of like, I'm not going to judge DiGiorno against like a fresh New York slice or something like that. I'm judging
frozen pizza's its own
DiGiorno.
category.
Yeah, frozen pizza's
sure.
its own thing. But like, yeah, so frozen pizza gets a little dicier. But in terms of like, I'll take DiGiorno over like Jack's or Tombstone or something like that. But that also depends on how much you're willing to spend on a frozen pizza, because frozen pizza is getting a little expensive to where if you want to go for a better frozen pizza, you could just get like an average delivery or pickup at a place and pay just about the same. So at that point, it becomes a cost thing. But yeah, I think tavern style is more traditional. But then you have Detroit, which has its own pan style, which is a whole different thing too. So, you know, don't paint all us Midwesterners with, you know, that broad brush, because, you know, we've got some discerning factors there. We all may be, well, at least I'll speak for myself and most people in the Midwest. We may be slightly iffy looking and fat and simpletons, but, you know, there's a little bit of differentiation there.
Yeah, I think it sounds like what I'm describing then is the St. Louis style, the thin crust, weird cheese, ketchupy tomato sauce. That was like the prevalent one in Central Illinois. Not much deep dish down there. They have like a Giordano's location, but again, like that's not what people like really pick up every Friday night to like get their weekly pizza with their family.
No.
So, but yeah,
that's a luxury pizza, but that's a special occasion pizza. Deep dish is special occasion pizza.
So where do you fall on New York pizza, Rick?
Oh, I love it. Yeah, New York pizza's really damn good. Like, I like getting sometimes maybe not a totally burnt crust, but, you know, getting more your wood fire-ish type thing. And New York, it's not that totally different. I'm here for grease, shockingly. So I'm here for the bigger slice. It's a challenge. New York pizza is really damn good. I am here for it. I would still take a tavern style Midwest pizza probably over a New York slice, but it's a great option that I'm not going to turn down if I'm offered.
Okay, fair enough.
Oh yeah,
fair enough.
What's your go-to tavern style pizza in Chicago? You spend a lot of time in Chicago.
It's funny, when I was working in the city, I was so rarely stay after work, because at least the last year I was taking the train, or before I was driving, and I'm like, I just want to get out of here, because I was living at least 45 minutes away. So I didn't stay around very often. But what are some of the places we would get that? I think Lou's thin crust is underrated. Where else would we go? Art of Pizza's thin crust is pretty good. Everybody for both of those always thinks of the deep dish or the stuffed, but I think their thin crust is pretty underrated. There's a place that Jay loves on the south side called Rosangela's. He loves Rosangela's. That's his number one place. Last meal, it's going to be Rosangela's. It's going to be involved somehow. So those are probably the top ones. What I'll say about Gulliver's, the place that I like now, they're known for their pan pizza. And I guess the people that own that are like, they've worked with the people from Pequod's. So if you're thinking about like quality, it's right up there. It's got like the crust has a nice crust to it, but the inside is so light and airy, and they give you the right balance in terms of cheese, sauce, and the quality of toppings, that if you're looking for pan style, it is right up there. It is so good.
I like Pequod's. Yeah, Bobby took me to Pequod's for the first time, and I like it a lot more now that I tried to read or listen to Moby Dick on an audiobook. So I now know what Pequod refers to, the boat.
Nice.
Just a miserable audiobook, a miserable book in general. Why is that an American classic? It is so boring and long and contrived and just mind numbing. Do you have any experience with Moby Dick?
I think I was supposed to read it for a class at one point, and it was either before SparkNotes existed or something like that. So like I just tried to fake it as well as I could. I did that so much with books in high school and college. I read what I had to, and especially after my junior research paper that we all had to do. I was in one of the I don't know, whatever they call like the advanced classes or whatever they called that at the time. And my teacher was really limiting on what we could do. Everybody else got to do their junior research paper on whatever they wanted, as long as it was done really well. We had to do a theme from an author that was on his list and do an entire research paper on it. So I was kind of done with, books for a while when I had to write a 12-page paper on the transcendentalism in John Updike novels, which is just like your description of Moby Dick. You think reading a book like that or a paper like that is boring? Try writing it. It was awful. I got it done and it was like a B or a B- on it, which I was more than happy with. But God, that was just drain. I didn't think things in high school could really drain your life force that much. Boy, that did a number on me, because I didn't want to read anything for so long after that. Obviously I had to, but boy, no. So no, I avoided reading as much as I could, especially towards the end of high school. Because once you're in that senior year, you do what you have to.
Yeah,
and I had a light course load anyway. I had done pretty good at being strategic about that. So yeah, no, I took senior year easy after that damn paper. It haunts me to this day.
Well, you might appreciate this story then. So when I was in high school, so either my junior or senior year, I feel like it was more my junior year, but I, for some reason, signed up for AP US history. Don't know why. Never wanted to take the AP test. I wasn't going to be one of those honors kids. Like, I've always been smart, but never like my path. And so this teacher, great teacher, very into very gung ho. Mm-hmm. Do you know what a DBQ was? Document based question. Did you ever take an AP test?
Yeah.
So yeah, you have like 10 primary sources. Like, here's a Declaration of Independence. Well, I'll answer these questions. He wanted us to make our own document-based question, then present it to the class. And I was like, I hate, I can write and I can do all these things. I hate having to research for writing. It's like, okay, where can I find this thing somewhere in the ether that supports my point? And it's such a bog on my time. I absolutely despise doing research for stuff. So what was this question? But he said we had to find actual primary sources, go through the microfiche in the library and find whatever to support our points. I'm like, this is literally my nightmare, my hell. I hate this. So I did what every kid should do, and I calculated my grades for the year thus far and the midterm and the final, and figured out what I would need to get on the final if I took an F for the quarter. And turned out it wasn't really that bad of a grade, because if I could still get a C if I got some relatively attainable number. Mm-hmm. So I didn't do it. And it was literally the only assignment for the whole quarter. And we showed up and all the desks aligned in a big U shape. He just goes around and he goes, "Hey, all right, where's your thing?" I'm like, "I didn't do it." And you saw this thing go off in his head, where it's never in a million years did he ever consider that answer would come out of any of his students' mouth, that it could just possibly just not be done. I just didn't do it.
You're a rebel, Dan. He didn't
talk to me ever again, basically. But I got the grade. Whether I'd done that or didn't do it, I still was getting essentially the same grade for the year.
Nice.
And I was like, I'm going to save myself this suffering. I could either suffer and get a C or not suffer and get a C. Which one would you take?
Right.
So I don't really look back on that I do look back on it with fondness, because I know how painful that would have been. But I feel a little bad, because he was a genuinely really good teacher. But yeah.
And you ruined he tells this story to his teacher buddies, sitting around round table. It's I had a kid one time just not do it. Just didn't do it. Shows up, nothing. This is you gave him a story for his life.
Well, I
think
you
sent him to therapy.
Yeah, right. He's still there. He's still there.
It's all on the table. But I mean, what do you think about? I mean, here's the thing about life, Rick. And maybe you agree with this. Let me know. Should we do more than we need to get the exact result that we want, or should we do exactly what is needed to get the result that we want?
I think it's hard to do that theoretically, because if it's something that is beneficial down the road, as an example, so here's an example. I brought him up earlier, and maybe it's fresh in my mind because I spoke with him yesterday. So the thing that you hate most is what Jack Silverstein is fantastic at, and that is the old line from The Wire from Lester Freeman, "You have a gift for the paper trail." That's Jack Silverstein, where he's writing a book on the Bulls, but his Substack, his newsletter that you can subscribe to, which I highly recommend for anybody that is a Bulls fan out there that's really interested in more in-depth stuff that we were talking about earlier, Bobby, about learning about the 98 team and all the context behind everything.
Yeah.
That he's fantastic at finding the old articles that give the proper quotes, that give the details that he needs for, his book or for the newsletter. Cause he's really being a genius about it, of basically saying, well, all this is just the raw form of what I find, and I'll put that in the newsletter. And then obviously as he's writing the book and kind of curtailing everything and putting it in the proper context, he just repurposes it for the sake of the book. So like, I think in that case, going the extra mile, even though it may give you the same grade or the same outcome, whatever it is, makes sense. If it's like a gen ed in college or something like that, see, that's where I got screwed a little bit. Well, not screwed. I screwed myself in terms of changing my major and all this stuff. But like when I was a music education major for a year and a half, I didn't really care too much about my gen eds because you had so few of them, because there were so many core music classes that you had to take. That stuff that could have been more relevant when I ended up switching my major, I did the bare minimum to get through and really didn't retain much of it just because of that. And now I'm like,
archaeology.
Yeah. And I'm like, I could maybe use some of this a little bit more now. Like if I had maybe taken Spanish in college instead of Italian, even though they're pretty close anyway, even just like I did in high school. Well, now maybe if I went to a baseball clubhouse, it'd be more useful, something like that, that I wish I had the contact stuff at the time. In those instances, it makes sense. But in most instances, you do what you do to get by and save some sanity as much as you can.
Yeah. You took Italian? You took Italian at NIU?
Yeah, for a year. Yeah, I think a year. And I had thought I had forgotten most of it until on Netflix I watched Salt, Fat, Acid, Heat, which is really, really great. It's like almost soothing in the way it's shot, in the way it's done. It's like one writer who wrote a book by the same name, I always forget her name, goes to Italy, goes to where was it? Somewhere in Japan, to figure out how those four elements are used in cooking and why they matter culturally and all this other stuff. And when they're in Italy, she speaks Italian, so it's all subtitled. But like from just hearing the conversation, I realized I remember a little bit more than I thought I did. Like I can confidently count to 10 and say, my name is Rick. And much outside of that, I'm not really here for anymore. I don't remember a lot.
It's funny. I took a sign language class for a semester at Northern.
I thought about doing that too. I'm fascinated by sign language. So one summer I stayed up on campus after I'd switched majors to try and catch up a little bit. And I was working in the dorm cafeterias. So one day in an entire 2-hour lunch service, we had 3 people come in.
3.
So I'm sitting in the dish room just waiting, and they have all the stuff up on the walls of, like the safety stuff, but they also have the sign language alphabet. So over the course of that shift, I just kind of taught myself the sign language alphabet.
Nice. Yeah. I took it. So I took it second semester of, I had maybe my sophomore year or junior year. So baseball player. So I was in season the whole second semester.
Mm-hmm.
So we had a really attractive TA or teacher's assistant. So I always made it a point to go to this class. I was like, I'm just going to go to this class, but I got to take all the tests separately from everybody. So I still know the alphabet a little bit. Like I know my name is Bobby. Like I can spell it out.
You can spell your own name?
I can spell my own name.
That's great.
Even on paper.
Good.
These tests were just silence. Like she would just sign something into the air and you had to write down what it was. But I got to take them on the side. So one-on-one. So she would sign it and I'd sit there and just stare at her because I didn't know anything about what she was signing. So then she would sign it again and I'd be like, I see you signing. Yeah, like I get it. And then it just got to the point where she'd sign something, mouth what it was, and then I would just try and interpret what she was mouthing. And then eventually she was just giving me the answers. So I got a great grade in this class, and I get to spend a lot of time with the TA. But I knew it just taking the benefit of being an athlete was taking taking a lot of tests separately from everybody else, unsupervised, by the way. Like if you ever thought college athletes got it a little bit easier, they do, because I was taking all these tests unsupervised. But she was just mouthing. It got to the point where the test was verbal. She was just sign languaging everything on the side.
That's like me in so senior year of high school. I really didn't want to take calculus because the good calculus teacher had left the school, and the only ones left were like just notoriously not great teachers. So I was like, well, I really don't want to take calculus, but that was like the logical step for the senior year math. So I said, screw it. I'm not great with computers, but I know a lot of my buddies are taking taking computer science. So I took comp sci. And for me, I had done zero programming at this point. And this was the first year. I think we were writing Java or something like that. So my friends got so frustrated with me. Like I understood the real basics, but they would get so frustrated with me trying to understand next level concepts in terms of being able to write my code, that each project someone would just say, okay, screw it. Just I'll send you my code. Just change the variable names and we'll call it a day. So that's how I got through senior year math, was just because everybody got frustrated and they didn't want to have to go step by step with me. So they just let me copy.
There you go.
And here we all are as grown-ups. Well, what's funny is that they always threaten you with your permanent record at like every stage of your life as a kid, and then there's like never a permanent record.
Yeah.
It's fascinating.
So I have to touch on my NIU nostalgia for a second.
Oh, yeah.
What's your go-to pizza up at NIU? Because I have thoughts. And what's your go-to just restaurant in general? Like late night.
My number one food item are the cheese nuggets from Pizza Pros.
Yes. Okay. Slam dunk.
Yeah.
That's the only correct answer.
Yes.
It's not Burritoville.
No.
It's not Lucalo's. It's Pizza Pros cheese nuggets.
RIP, by the way.
Yes.
For Lucalo's. Yeah. The beer nuggets, that I went there once to pick them up. And then I had been told, no, just always get them delivered. Well, I went to pick them up, and then I learned why you always get them picked up. Because not a great place you ever want to be in. Now the beer nuggets from Pizza Villa are good, but Pizza Villa is expensive. The potato salad from Fatty's is one of the only ways I will consume mayo.
Interesting.
So I'm very anti-mayo, but there are very few exceptions, and that potato salad is one of them. I worked at Papa John's when I was there, so I learned how to make Papa John's pizza edible. So here, I'll not big on ranch either. I'm very odd that way. So let me give you.
It's a very Midwest thing. The pizza and ranch thing is very Midwest.
Yeah, I don't like that at all. That my wife will do that from time to time. Like not
even
all
on
the time.
Frozen pizza where it like kind of needs the help.
I won't. I'd rather put hot sauce on it. Something like that.
Have you ever had Old Bay on pizza?
I haven't.
So when I do a frozen pizza, and I go to the Red Baron brick oven, which is $3.50. It's actually very, very good. I covered in Old Bay. It's really, really good. You should try it.
I will.
Try it.
So here's my ultimate. Here was what I would get from Papa John's when the owner wasn't managing that night, and you could pretty much just make what you want and take it home with you. So you take the thin crust, which their thin crust in and of itself is actually not bad. It's decently flaky. So it's a solid thin crust.
Okay.
Now you do that. You then put a layer of the garlic butter, because the garlic butter was actually solid. That's the key to these places, is they got to have the stuff that's cheaper actually be good, because it covers the other stuff not being as good. So a layer of that, a layer of cheese, a second thin crust goes the opposite way to to capture the garlic butter goodness and the cheese goodness in there. Regular sauce, crushed red pepper on the bottom. I'm always big on the toppings being underneath the cheese so that you get some of the grease in there and the extra flavor oozing out. Then what? The pepperoni, the cheese, and then your seasoning type junk. The seasoning packet at Papa John's is huge. That is the key. And it's only like a quarter. Like, so key to make that food edible. It serves the purpose of like what the Old Bay would. It's I don't know exactly what's in it.
Make that food edible.
But I would have a double-decker pizza, and almost every shift I would make one before I left so that I would have a free meal or two.
Just cheating us. Papa John would not be happy with you.
I like how you just described. That just struck a funny chord. Make that food as calling a pizza, like an established pizza chain. Make that food edible. As if it's like a ration packet that they drop from an airplane over the desert in Africa.
I had to stop myself so many times at the score because I wanted to basically say that, but they bought ad time on the station, so I'm like, yeah. Can't quite go there.
You can only bash it in the private sector.
Pretty much.
Speaking of pizza, so one of the things I like about New York pizza is that it's simple, right? It's just a good, simple crust. It's very light on the sauce, and it's just like this delicious. It's like the same cheese. It's like seems like one mozzarella distributor with all like the best pizza places up in New York. What are some other foods that you feel like? Stop messing with it. Stop adding to this. Stop like adding, you know what I mean? And that's part of my thing with toppings. And like the Midwest, there's always like a lot of toppings. Good New York pizza doesn't need toppings. So it just is what it is. So what are some foods that you feel like just leave it alone? This is amazing in its simplicity.
That's a really good question.
Like grilled cheese obviously falls in that category.
Sure. Of course. Yeah. Grilled cheese falls in that. Like, I'm not that big on like the boutique versions of a lot of things. Like, that seems to be the trend now, is let's just be smarter than everybody else on everything.
Yeah, chicken and waffles is a good example of that.
Yes, very much so. I think even just sometimes how much people will do to chicken, like, just calm down, man. Like there's a place that's in, Jay and I talk about it on the I'm Fat podcast all the time. It's Fry the Coop. There's one, I always forget. I think it's one in Oak Lawn. There's one in Elmhurst, which is the one that I go to. And then I believe there's one on the north side of the city somewhere. I'm not exactly sure where, but they just do hot chicken. And it's very simple. They have a variety of rubs that you can choose, and that's it. They do chicken and waffles. They'll throw it on a sandwich, and they'll give you strips. That's pretty much it. And then they make sure.
Yeah, it's like a Gene and Jude's, if you're familiar. Of chicken. Gene and Jude's, for those listening, is the best hot dog place in the world.
Yeah.
Rick, thoughts?
Dude, I never spent any time in the city, man. Like I'm good
Gene
with.
Gene and Jude's is River Grove. That's not too far from where you're at.
Okay. See, I'm embarrassingly bad. Like, I grew up Western burbs, but like far enough west where to go to the city was kind of a trek, and we never did. So like my city knowledge, or even like towns around the city, is embarrassingly low. I try and cover it up the best I can. I've learned a bit, obviously, in my time being in the city every day, but it's embarrassingly low. Like, if it's Western burbs, I got you. If it's DeKalb, I got you. Southern burbs a little bit too, but no, I fully own the fact that I'm brutal in that regard.
I think a lot of people grow up that way. Like, I grew up, my family, we didn't really go to Baltimore. That was the closest city. And like, if I didn't, like, I'm a city person, so I've like sought cities out deliberately in my adulthood. Mm-hmm. But if I hadn't, I'd be the exact same way you are. I feel like that's pretty normal, honestly. Like, Bobby's always lived in the city, and like, I seek cities out, but I think your condition is probably more normal than anybody's.
Yeah, I don't like it as much though, because as much as I fall into my my normal patterns, and I don't vary too much. Like, when I go to a restaurant, if I have something that's really good, it takes a lot for me to try something else then from there, because it's like, well, I have back to the well. Yeah, I have a guaranteed great experience right here, or I could try something else and it might not be as good, and then I'll be mad at myself for not getting the same thing that I always get. So it's a trade-off. But yeah, I do wish I was more adventurous in that way, in terms of just wanting to seek it out when I was younger. I do it a little bit now. Like, when I would go see people, I would always just tell them, like, wherever you think I should go, that's where we're going.
Gotcha.
Yeah, take a good recommendation in the city.
Yeah.
Well, what do you got on Italian beef? Sorry, Bobby, I beat you in there, man. Be faster. Sorry, man. Radio.
It's tough to beat Portillo's. I mean,
I agree with that.
Like
position.
Portillo's is great. I've got Bona right by me. I had Al's once, and it was really good. Don't get me wrong, but I just think it's really tough to beat a Portillo's beef. Portillo's is magic because they always have, like, somehow, while we go through everything that's happening with everybody cutting back on employees and whatever in any context, it doesn't matter, sports or anywhere else. Portillo's always has 50 people, it feels like, working. They get their food out real quick, and I'll be damned if it's not delicious every single time, no matter what location. So Portillo's has some sort of wizardry where they actually seem to pay people okay, and they work hard, and they're able to keep them employed even when, the economy can take a downturn or there's a damn pandemic going on. So props to Portillo's on every level.
Are they still open? I assume they probably are, right?
Yeah. Their drive-throughs are just like asinine.
They've
like,
gotta
at
be
least
It's insane.
and yet they still get your food out in a relatively, like, you don't feel offended by the time that it takes to get your food now compared to what it normally was.
Yeah, and Portillo's always, I mean, for people who aren't in the Midwest, Portillo's is this amazing Italian beef and hot dog joint.
Mm-hmm.
And they've grown to a bigger chain, and they do serve. I mean, if you go in Chicago, like near that McDonald's in the middle of the city near Michigan Avenue, there's a huge Portillo's, and it's insanely busy during the weekends, the summer, and then just like any mealtime in general. But they have a system, and they churn people. And if you are in the drive-thru, Portillo's is noticeably longer than any other. It's not like fast food. Like, you're getting real food pretty fast, but it's noticeably slower than Chick-fil-A, like, whatever. It's not that. But Bobby, you don't like this take, do you?
I don't.
I know you don't. I
like Portillo's. I'm partial to Bona beef. I mean, I've got my specific, standalone beef places. Johnny's Beef in Elma Park I grew up on. Mr. Beef in the city on Orleans is a slam dunk. I'm partial to Bona beef if we're talking, Portillo's quality, because I went to college with one of the sons who now basically runs a lot of the Bona beefs, and he runs a lot of the operations. So if there's a Portillo's and a Bona in relative proximity, I'm going to Bona beef.
That's fair. It's not like it's bad by any stretch. I think they're really close.
Yeah,
I like them both.
The thing with Portillo's,
Beef Shack in St. Charles.
Oh yeah, I've been to Beef Shack.
Very good. Very good.
Yeah, that one surprised me because it's like you go up to it and it doesn't look. It's not a great looking building.
Mm-hmm.
That's how you know it's good.
I know.
That's how you know it's
true.
good.
On the last podcast that Jay and I did, we did ways you can know that a restaurant is good, and it's like if there are cop cars there, it's good. Because the cops always know the good food in the area. That's a big one. If you see someone really old is working in the kitchen, that is clearly family and not just like, a cheap, someone that's going to work for cheap because they're still living in the 50s or something. Like those are some surefire ways that you can tell if a place is fantastic.
Oh yeah. It's good when you walk up and it feels slightly dirty, just slightly dirty, not maybe unsanitary, but it's like they just don't. Those two people back there don't have enough time to totally clean the place, so they make it presentable.
Right, John Taffer might yell a little bit, but once he tries the food, then he'll be okay.
He loves it.
Yeah, and if you were to ask them, like, hey, this place could be a little cleaner. Do you want me to spend time cleaning the nooks and crannies, or do you want me to make a damn sandwich? Like, good point. Okay, do what you're good at. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
So Rick, you talk about I got to touch on this. I put it in my notes. It's 2 episodes ago on your OMFAT podcast. You and Jay talk about Malort, and I'm sure you talk.
Amazing. Good job.
I'm sure. So I sent a bottle of Malort to Dan, and Dan's familiar with Malort. I've bought it before. It's my go-to shot. So I'm in the party of I actually like Malort, and I can get into the reasons why. I see you sweating over there talking about it.
To be fair, I'm sweating anyway. It's because like, so I live right by a fire department and train tracks, and we don't have central air. So I close the window that's normally open just so the sound's not coming in too bad. So it gets a little warm, and just did my laundry yesterday and haven't put everything away. So I put on one of my heavier shirts this morning. So I am a little damp.
Mm.
So Malort is obviously, it's a Chicago thing. It's an acquired taste. So I've sent it to a few people that have been on the podcast. They've sent us some videos back of them sharing it with, friends and family, and how terrible it actually is the first time you have it. Where do you fall on Malort? Where's your love-hate relationship with Malort?
I mean, maybe it's because I only had it the one time, but the one time was enough. I'm out on Malort. I feel like it's seriously one of those things, and maybe it's because of like the people that I knew that were first bringing it up were the more like always having to be on the front edge hipster type people that were like, no, it's great. It's, because it's like, I swear people were just trying to make sure that they liked it because it's a Chicago thing. And I'm like, I just don't like it. That's all. There's too many other options.
It's objectively bad. I mean, just objectively, it just tastes
seriously
terrible.
If we did a blind taste test of stuff, just purely on that, out. I'm just out on it. There's too many other delicious things that I could have a shot of or drink instead that maybe I could acquire that taste, but I have no interest in acquiring it.
So there's my reasoning right there, is that I have yet to find those other alternatives that I think are better than, like, Jameson. I don't like Jameson.
Wow.
I'm not a Jameson person. Tequila, like, you give me Patron or Casamigos shot, like, that's my least favorite.
But why do you try to like Malort so much? It's just like objectively bad.
I don't
like you put in work over the years.
Well, I mean, it's definitely what Rick said, is like, you wanna like it. I think just, I don't dislike the aftertaste. So the Malort, the initial taste of Malort is really it's not bad. It's, I guess, comparable to any other shot. It's the aftertaste that lingers that people don't like. And I find that aftertaste much better than the tequila, like, potential throwing up in my mouth gag reflex I get from a shot of Patron. I don't know. I'm not gonna.
Gross. I'll give you that.
Tequila's disgusting.
But in its own unique way.
As a shot, or are you cool with it in a mixed drink fashion?
I will drink it in a mixed drink. I will, but it's as a shot. Tequila is like a punch in the. It's much more of a punch in the face than Malort.
Do you have any booze that you can't have anymore because of either NIU experiences or anything else?
Yes, NIU Clementine vodka.
Oh,
Clementine Svedka.
Yeah.
So going to the liquor store at the tender age of 19, getting a bottle of Clementine vodka and taking lemon drop shots. So if you're not familiar with the lemon drop shot, you take a shot of the vodka, you have a lemon with a little bit of sugar on it, take the lemon, bite into it, lemon drop shot. Now, after you have a dozen or so of those, you start reusing the lemons, and then you get a little, then the night gets a little hazy, and then you wake up sometime the next day not feeling so hot. And you have this recurring thought in your mind: if you see a Clementine, either the bottle, smell it, or the fruit, you do want to die. And that's my NIU. To this day, I smell it and I can't do it.
Okay. I got two. One of them, and they actually came within a week and a half of each other. One is, everybody in college has UV. So it was UV blue.
UV blue. Oof.
So on my floor, I was waiting to get in on beer pong, and there was a decent wait. So I have a little bit of UV blue left, because I would always just mix it with Sprite and call it a day. But I had like a little bit left in the bottle. It didn't look like much. So I'm like, well, I'll just kind of take care of this. But I was just doing shots. 8 shots later, I'm finally done with the UV blue, and I get up in beer pong. And the next thing that I remember is I'm sitting on the toilet, and it's 5:30 in the morning. And I guess I was really good in beer. I was always a really good beer pong player, sober or drunk. And I apparently held the table by myself because we had an odd number of people. So I played by myself, drank all the beer, and I held for 9 games. And that didn't end very well. So that was that one. So I can't do UV blue anymore. And the other one was for somebody's birthday. A guy on my floor that I didn't even really like that much, but he offered to buy the booze. So I was like, all right, I'll drink with him for the night. We got Captain Morgan private stock and doing double shots with the birthday girl and everybody that came up to her that wanted to do a shot with her. Our 5th of it was gone in about 20 minutes between the two of us. And as far as I'm told, we went through a whole nother one that night. Someone went to the liquor store and got it for us. I have zero recollection of that. And so the Captain Morgan private stock is off limits completely because that was my worst night. My buddies I was able to get back to the room past the cops in the dorm because I was in marching band for all 4 years I was at Northern. So I was able to roll step by while not really wavering much. So, marching band came in handy for once. And then after that, my buddies had to help me get into bed. They put just like athletic shorts on me to help me out. They were apparently my little brother's athletic shorts because I woke up the next morning and realized I wasn't sure why I couldn't move my legs. I had a garbage can next to me. I puked in that. It was a horrible night. So Captain Morgan private stock, UV blue, out.
What do you got, Dan? What's yours?
I don't really have a booze one. So 2 things to know about me is 3 things. I don't drink all that much. 2, I have a very strong constitution. So to get to that point is like extremely rare. And 3, I actually don't get hangovers. Never have.
I'm with you on that. I'm actually with you on that. But yeah, wow. The thing is, I've realized it's a trade-off. I don't get hangovers, but I black out easier than most. So it's kind of would you rather know everything that happened, but just be paying for it the next day? Or would you rather have a little blissful ignorance and feel fine the next day? I kind of like my end of that.
Oh yeah.
Interesting.
Isn't that more reason to
I've never met another one of my kind. It's extremely rare. It's wasted on me. It's like, I wish I could gift it to like some hobo who.
Well, and like, I don't drink much anymore either. I guess this is being an adult thing, but in college, I mean, all bets are off when you're in college.
Mm-hmm. No, mine's not a booze. Mine is, I was going on like a day trip with my family when I was like, I don't know, like 7, 8, 9, 10, some small age. And I was chugging Yoo-hoo in a very hot car that was rumbling around. And I Ralphed hot Yoo-hoo vomit all over our family car. And I couldn't touch a Yoo-hoo for a decade. And Yoo-hoo is really good. I later realized again as a young adult, I'm like, man, I've been really missing out. I had the Yoo-hoo double fudge, which I don't know if you've had that, but it's awesome.
Yes.
But Yoo-hoo, I was like, oh no, get that yellow bottle away from me. Like, I know what you do. It was so sad. But yeah, my whole childhood was sans Yoo-hoo after that car ride.
It sounds disgusting. Yoo-hoo in itself is, I don't like Yoo-hoo. I'm not a Yoo-hoo fan. It's like a watery chocolate milk thing going on. But in the hot car, like, I want to throw up for you.
Yeah, dude, seriously.
So bad. And it's so funny thinking about how, because I have a niece and a nephew now. My niece is only a week old. My nephew is 18 months. And I just think about my sister and my brother-in-law. And then I think back about my parents, what every parent goes through, like the way kids throw up. It's so funny when they're like, bah! It's like, nah! And they're like a combination of vomiting and crying. This like weird, like this weird cry that they're sad that they want. It's this whole nightmarish thing. Like all the stuff that you go through as a parent to just like clean your kids up as they figure out their life and their bodies. It's gross. But I just remember that car smelled, because we continued on the trip and that car must have just been horrific for the rest of the day. So
this is an insight to Dan's youth that we rarely get. It's just a smelly
horror stories,
regurgitated Yoo-hoo in the back of a minivan.
And the thing is, I am not a puker. You couldn't run me in exercise to get me to puke. It would never happen. I have like an iron stomach, And so I can like almost count on two hands probably the times I have in my life, because my body just like doesn't figure it out. It doesn't solve its problems that way. But I got a stomach bug, and this is not a story I'm going to go into much detail with, but I was taking I had a really long commute from my sister's house. I was living with her for a couple months when I first moved back to DC, and I was driving up 66, then getting on the metro all the way into DC. So they got a stomach flu in my sister's house. Didn't know it, thought it was food poisoning. It turned out to be stomach flu. So I was taking care of them. Oh. This befell me. I was in WeWork in Chinatown, and it was like 7:00, and I was like not feeling great, but like when I don't feel great in my stomach, nothing ever comes of it. Like I just like my body figures it out, works it out. 2 hours later, I'm like normal again. This wasn't one of those times. And I suddenly became so sick in my stomach. And I was so far from home, like 90 minutes, had to get on the metro, had to like go get my car, then drive 30 more minutes. Like it was like an hour and a half commute. And suddenly I was like walking through the pouring rain to get to the metro, like unsure of what was going to happen. I was like shivering. This was like a legit stomach, terrible, one of those 2-day stomach flus. And it was just like this nightmarish. I was on this metro, had to get off the metro twice to go beg the people to let me in the bathroom and I like never throw up. So it was just like very, very few times. And then when you're not like an often puker, you forget how terrible puking is. It's such an awful thing. It's just like you can't, I'm not going to go into it, but we all know just the terrible, how terrible is the puke. It's just like, ugh. And I'm lucky that I don't have to go through that very much. But yeah, being a long way from home when you don't know how you're going to make it is not a fun feeling. So
I'm going to throw up just thinking about you drinking Yoo-Hoo as like a 10-year-old in a hot, like I'm picturing you locked in a hot van with no crack in the window, and your parents only left you with a Yoo-Hoo.
So I'll tell you another Yoo-Hoo story. This is unrelated to vomiting. 10 years later, I was on a canoe with my buddy, and I had like made up with Yoo-Hoo, and we were out fishing on this canoe on this little reservoir. And, canoes are famously unstable, right? So I have I was like in my bathing suit. I think I had my t-shirt or something. So I had like my t-shirt, my car keys, and then like a 4-pack of Yoo-Hoo double fudge. I'm like, hey man, I'm going to get out of this. I gotta piss. I'm going to jump out of this canoe, piss in the water, come back in. Okay. I jump out. As I go under the water, I come back up. Do you know what I see? A capsized canoe. I jump out. The whole thing turns over. But the Yoo-Hoo, I guess, flipped over perfectly, where it took it was either my shirt or like my cargo shorts or whatever I was wearing before I put my bathing suit on. It took it and pinned it like a concrete brick to the bottom of the reservoir. So suddenly my car keys were now at the bottom, and they're still, as far as I know, at the bottom of this reservoir, pinned to the bottom of the seabed by a 4-pack of very cold and still delicious Yoo-Hoo double fudge. So if you're in Harper County, Maryland, and you want to go find my old car keys to a car that doesn't exist, and some just pristine, cold 10-year-old Yoo-Hoo double fudge, it's there for you. Scavenger hunt.
That's awesome. Also, Hot Yoo-Hoo Vomit is a great grunge band. I love their second album.
Yeah, that's their second album is much better than their debut.
Right. Yeah, everybody else just wanted to be in on that first album, but no, the second album's where it's at.
That's where you separate the true fans of the hot Yoo-Hoo Vomit grunge band. Oh, I have to turn this off and go throw up. I'm gonna throw up thinking about Yoo-Hoo.
Well, let's go out on a good note. So, Rick, what would you say is, before we ask you where people can find you on the web and all that stuff, what would you say that your number one favorite food would be?
It's pizza. I'm not going to overthink it. I can have pizza every day of the week, and maybe in a few weeks I would need a day off. And because there's different varieties, the different toppings, there's so much variety within the pizza that it's my go-to. I mean, probably number 2 at this point is most things barbecue related. One thing that's barbecue related, that is my way you can know that a restaurant is really good. If they pay attention to the hot link, that is a good way to know that the rest of it's going to be good, because a lot of places will just kind of yada, yada, yada the hot link. because it's the cheapest, and I would assume it's probably one of the least purchased. But if a place takes the time to do a really good hot link, that's when you know you have a good barbecue spot. Between that, the sides, the brisket, the burn ends, I choose pulled pork less than most, but it's not like it's bad. Obviously,
You can burn out on pulled pork. I think it's like more common than everything else. So you're gonna have that a lot.
Right.
I'm kind of burned out on pulled pork. Yeah.
Yeah, and I just feel like there's so much people do with pulled pork and not enough variety in what they do in terms of brisket. But brisket is also brisket, so you don't have to do too much to it, and sometimes you don't want to screw it up. Just keep the simplicity of it. So, but pizza's number 1, barbecue 2, and then maybe like a burger 3. So like that's my top 3. You asked for 1, I gave you 3.
No, that's fair. It's hard to pin it down to 1 anyway.
Yeah.
Also, why haven't you had Andrew Zimmern on your show yet?
We haven't had any guests, and part of that was a logistical issue, but now that like the way Jay and I record, where it makes it much more easy to have guests. I've got a Google Doc sitting with guests that I want to have on. Jay's got some that he wants to get on. I think we're going to do that in the not too distant future, because especially if this quarantine keeps going and everybody's new food experiences are limited.
Mm-hmm.
And, we've done some fat hacks in terms of quarantine living, but, we're kind of running out just like everybody else of, other stuff to do. There's only so many pick 3s in the world that you can do over a certain period of time. So we might start getting some guests on. We've had some people that for a long time have said, hey, when you guys start having guests, I want in. So we've got a list, which is nice. So I know who I want the first guest to be, but I'm not going to reveal this because Jay and I have not spoken about it yet. But
Gotcha.
There might be some guests in the future.
It's the I'm Fat podcast. Is there a weight limit on the guests? Like, can you have can you have somebody who's under like 170 pounds on the podcast? Seems like a Dan Bernstein.
See, we are always open to normies as well as fats. So the thing is, if you have some people have a fat lifestyle and are blessed with they don't gain weight no matter what. Their metabolism is incredible. And for some of them, it's because they work out consistently. And for some of them, it's because they won the genetic lottery. And for the ones that are just as lazy as me and eat just as much as me, but are skinny, I hate them.
Yeah.
I envy them.
As you should.
And I hate them. But not necessarily a weight limit. It's either you have to have, good fat experiences to talk about. Fat theory is a big thing, especially in terms of food. I know there's at least one person on my list who is a normie, but has real good thoughts on fat theory in terms of classification. So there's someone that I want to get on for those purposes. So we leave it open to people because we are all inclusive. Like when people ask, it's a body positive podcast as much as anything. We don't rag on anybody. If you want to get skinny, all right, cool. You can still listen to us. We may, give you a little bit of the side eye, but we won't banish you completely.
Mm-hmm.
That's your own choice. But just, still know and still have those. Everybody has those things. Everybody can relate to the amount of things, foods that, regardless of your diet or whatever you're trying to do, if you get an opportunity to have X, whatever X is for you, you're taking that opportunity. Or if there are people that are former fats that vicariously live through our experiences, or normies that just don't have our sensibilities, but love hearing about them. So we're all inclusive, but in terms of guests, you have to have some sort of fat quality to you.
Yeah. It sounds like the fats community is very accepting.
Yeah, very much. I mean, we're not that picky. Food, people, otherwise, whatever.
Well, yeah,
Absolutely.
I listened to Andrew Zimmern on Guy Kawasaki's podcast.
Mm-hmm.
It was really, I've watched his show a ton when I was younger, and it's just a cool, not pushing him on you. I'm just saying it was a cool conversation, and he's an interesting guy. It was interesting just to hear some of his story behind the, bizarre foods thing. But
yeah, he's much more adventurous than I could be. Like, I'm pretty much a wimp when it comes to, like really out there stuff food wise.
You're not a big eating testicles kind of guy.
Not particularly.
Raw hearts. So okay.
No.
To each their own, whatever.
Yeah, right. And like the weird thing for me is I don't know why. I have such a hard time finding any seafood that I like. I don't know if it's because of growing up in the Midwest and it's just not as good a quality food. Maybe if I came and visited you, that would probably be a better place to maybe give it another spin. But like out here, like I just have a hard time finding
Fish
anything
smells
I like.
not good for anybody. Yeah. There's a great place. I think it's like the third busiest restaurant in America, and we'll see. I hope to God they open back up. It's called Old Ebbitt Grill. It's right next to the White House. They do like seafood happy hour from like 11 p.m. or maybe it's like 10 p.m. to close every night, and great oysters. But again, it's like, you're right. It's super like right out of the sea, very fresh. And so yeah, I think that the Midwest experience you've described is accurate. So where can people follow up with you? Listen to obviously the I'm Fat podcast, basketball camp, but where else can people find you on the web, Rick?
At Rick C. Camp on Twitter. Same on Instagram. I'm not that active on Instagram, although I've been trying to get better. So one thing I'm doing that is really probably falls under quarantine hobbies that is incredibly lame. Have you guys been following what Ricky O'Donnell is doing with Western Illinois basketball?
No, I saw a tweet. Did you tweet at him recently or just?
Yeah,
I saw something come through my feed about that.
Okay, so Ricky O'Donnell is a really good basketball writer. He's furloughed at the moment with SB Nation. He's their basketball, college and NBA basketball editor, and he also writes. So what he's been doing in his time being furloughed is he took NCAA college basketball 2K8, which is the last college basketball game that was made. I guess it's a game he's played a ton before. And he's trying to take one of the, like, when you start a legacy as a coach, you have to start with one of the 40 crappiest teams. And he doesn't play the games. All he does is recruit, set the rotations, and all the preseason settings. And he simulates the season. And the goal was to make Western Illinois win a national championship. So he writes about every single season and the recruiting process and the games and big wins, losses, all that kind of stuff. And he made it through, and spoiler alert, in year 8, he ends up winning a national championship. And he ended up streaming it on Twitch, and it did really well. Well, I'm just bored. So I'm doing the same thing. I'm not doing any of the writing or anything like that, but on my Instagram story, I'll just post, all right, I got to the conference tournament. Here's my record. All right, I'm going to the NCAAs. And right now I'm sitting in year 11 because it only takes like an hour and change to go through an entire season of simulation. So I'm in year 11, not as good as Ricky at this. I'm in the Sweet 16 for the first time with UC Riverside, taking on number 1 seeded Duke team. I'm a 12 seed, dangerous 12 seed as always.
Always.
So you can keep up on that because I know it sounds riveting to everybody in my Instagram story. So at Rick C. Camp there as well. Those are my main places. People on Facebook as well. The I'm Fat podcast has a Facebook page. Basketball Camp does not, because quite frankly, I don't think I earned one yet. I've still got a lot of work to do with that one. I think part of what's exciting, and I'm sure you guys as well, with the podcast, is just figuring out what you want it to be.
Yeah.
And kind of learning on the fly and adjusting as you go. So I'm still learning that I'm only 4 or 5 episodes into Basketball Camp. I love what I'm doing. I enjoy it. I hope people that listen are enjoying it, but I'm also just trying to figure out how I want it to sound, what type of basketball content that I really want in there. It's part Bulls, part NBA, because I think especially in the Chicago area, we get so locally focused that there's so much great basketball out there outside of whatever the hell the Bulls have been lately that people need to know about that. So when I feel like I'm maybe at a point where I have a better idea of what I am, I'll start that up as well. But just, I update everything on Twitter at Rick C. Camp for that. And yeah, that's pretty much it. I'm a pretty basic guy in that regard. I'm not big on doing anything on Twitch or.
So no TikToks, no TikToks.
I don't even have a TikTok account at this point.
All the weird dances. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm your basic Chicago area, white mid-30s guy. That's pretty much where I'm at.
All right. Fair enough. Bobby, you want to send us out?
Rick, we appreciate it. Check out the podcast, I'm Fat Podcast, Basketball Camp Podcast, and tune in Friday. Do we have a guest yet Friday, Dan?
No, it's me and you.
Oh,
we're gonna hit it hard.
We're gonna go hard in the paint. on Friday. But join us
Yeah.
Friday, 9
Rick,
a.m.
thanks so much.
Eastern. Thanks, Rick.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, guys.
All right, we'll see you next week on the Morning Brushback podcast.